Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Get CME for this episode by clicking on the CME link in the show notes. Today, we welcome Gail Gazelle. She's an internal medicine physician and physician coach. We're going to talk about her book, Mindful MD: 6 Ways Mindfulness Restores Your Autonomy and Cures Healthcare Burnout. Gail, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Kevin.
So, we'll get into your book in a little bit. First off, briefly share your story and journey to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, I started my career in internal medicine, but what I really wanted to do was end of life care. And since I trained in the 1980s, to date myself, end of life care wasn't really a field yet. So I got my first job working in hospice. I published an article in the New England Journal of Medicine about end of life care. It was an article bringing to light the unethical practice of slow or Hollywood codes. And I continued my journey. I'm here at Harvard Medical School, where I've been for the last 2 decades. And I suffered through my own burnout. I had
Mhm.
a child on my own. I felt really guilty when I wasn't home with him. I should be with my patients. When I was at work, I felt guilty that I wasn't doing more. And that led me to get coaching myself and find it really life changing. And then to become a coach myself, I was really a pioneer in the field. I became a coach 13 years ago. And so I've had the pleasure of coaching over 500 physicians one on one, many more in groups, and really helping them find the balance and reduce burnout that I know is possible. That's an overview of my journey.
So I want to take you back to that time where you first felt burnout managing all the different aspects of both your professional and personal life. You said coaching was life changing, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this when we talk about your book, but what exactly was the change that coaching made in your life to help things out?
Yeah, great question. I'm somebody who had years of therapy to help recover from some of the complexities of my own childhood. Therapy was great, but there were things that just weren't shifting in terms of really how I saw myself, what I thought I was capable of, my ability to just enjoy my life and be present in my life, my ability to really be my best self as a parent, as a physician, as a human being. And coaching just connected a lot of dots for me. It was really a tremendous surge in personal growth that helped me prioritize this is what's most important to me. And now I can see a little more clearly what's in it for me to make the changes because so much of coaching really has to do with motivating ourselves, motivating our clients to make the changes, to live the life and career that they want so much. And coaching just was like leapfrogging forward. I laughed more. My patients would say to me, "Oh, Dr. Gazelle, are you in love now?" They'd see me so much happier. I was a much better parent. I could put aside work more and really be present with my son. So I didn't have to feel all of that parental guilt that I wasn't doing enough. Those are just a few of the things. And it also really spurred my interest in mindfulness, the ability to really train my mind to focus where I wanted to step out of all the mental stories of not being good enough, being an imposter, etc. So the benefits were just so profound. And again, those are the benefits that I've really been able to translate for the physician clients that I've had the pleasure of serving.
Of course, you're a coach yourself now. So today, what are the most common reasons or issues that physicians come to you for?
Oh, by far and away, it's burnout.
Hmm.
It's how can I possibly work in this demanding circumstance of healthcare when my value isn't being seen, when my work isn't being respected, when I'm just treated like a widget? How can I possibly withstand that? That is by and above the most common things. Certainly, leadership development, work transitions, behavioral modification, let's say for people with anger management issues or disruptive physicians. But there's so much disquietude, as you well know, with 2 out of 3 of us all suffering with burnout, and really how that's the erosion of the soul. So, by far, that's the most common.
All right. And we're going to talk more about that as we discuss your book, Mindful MD: 6 Ways Mindfulness Restores Your Autonomy and Cures Healthcare Burnout. So tell us, how did your book come together?
I've been working on this book for over 5 years. As a coach, you have an intimate window into the life of a fellow physician. All of my clients are physicians and physician leaders. And what I've seen over and over is the power of really getting to know our own mind, our own
Mm.
mental stories, all of our unhelpful thoughts, all of the ways that we kind of box ourselves in addition to the ways that the system boxes us in. And I've seen repetitive patterns. There are things that we learn in our training that completely derail our sense of
Mm,
satisfaction as we go on. All the comparisons, the ratings and rankings, all of the pimping that we endure during our training, all of the comparisons that are made. If we're not perfect, we're a failure. All of those things really set us back, and they also make it very difficult for us as employees now, as opposed to independent practitioners, because we're taught, on the one hand, that we're the captain of the team, we're the one who has the answer, we're the one who needs to be invulnerable. And here we are now, largely as employed physicians, and we are no longer the captain of the team. We are
mm.
no longer the boss. And that dissonance is very hard for many physicians to manage. I've seen that over and over. So the book really provided for me a way to share what I've learned, so many pearls of wisdom specifically about mental training that I know can help so many colleagues get out of burnout and maybe not even get into burnout in the first place.
So you articulate that tension so well in terms of that training physicians to be the captain of ship, but also as an employed physician, they're not in that role. So what are some things that physicians can do when dealing with that situation? Because I talk to hundreds of physicians on the show, they write on Kevin MD and they describe exactly what you're articulating right now. So what are some first steps that they can do to resolve that tension?
The first way that mindfulness can help with that tension is recognizing what we can control and what we can't. I have seen so many physicians, let's say, sit down to chart, for example, and it's almost as if smoke is coming out of their ears. They're so
Mm,
angry about the unfairness. This is not what I signed up for. How could you be asking me to do this? I'm here to take care of patients, and this is unfair. And sadly, that emotionality then makes it very difficult for them to get the charts done. We have to harness what is it that's under our control and what is it that not. And we have to reduce the expenditure of energy that we don't have on things that are out of our control. So that's one very important part of how kind of mindfulness, getting to know yourself, your own patterns, where is your energy going, is absolutely critical to avoid burnout. That dovetails with the need to reduce reactivity. Many of us are
mm,
very reactive, right? We learn to be less reactive with patients, but we don't learn how to be less reactive, let's say with administrators, right? Or with
yeah.
what many physicians call the toxic boss. We can learn how to do that. Mindfulness can help us tremendously in regulating our emotions in a way that serves us. I'm a coach. I'm all about the individual physician in front of me. And that's what the book is about, a roadmap to help yourself really manage, given all the complexities in healthcare that don't seem to be going away anytime soon. That's what this is about. And further, we tell ourselves a lot of stories. So, for an example, Kevin, and I share this in the book, Mindful MD, we might have a story about our own happiness. I can't be happy with this blank electronic health record. I can't be happy with all these administrators. I'll be happy when they get me a better boss. I'll be happy when I retire. And that's a story that may have a kernel of truth. But if you think back to, let's say, college, maybe you had a story, well, I'll be happy when I get into med school. Then you get into med school. I'll be happy when I finish med school and I get the right residency. Then you're a resident, and here's really the kicker. I'll be happy when I become an attending. Now, for everybody listening to this who is an attending, you can appreciate the fallacy of this thinking. And yet it keeps us from actually finding contentment right now because we're always waiting. It's only when I finish this, then I'll be happy. And in fact, that isn't what happiness is about. So that's another one of the ways that I get into in the book. How can you notice that storyline and work with it so that you can have what you want right now? The contentment, the career satisfaction that you've worked so hard to achieve. So that's, I think when people hear mindfulness, they think, oh, it's so woo woo, and she's telling me it's going to cure all the mess of healthcare. It's not that at all. It's training the mind to focus where you want it to focus so that you can really become the master of your mind rather than what I think is true for many of us is that we are the captive.
I think everything you're saying I completely agree with. And again, you articulated so well. So tell me about the actual process of doing that. Physicians, they've been trained pretty much since high school or undergraduate to think and behave and react in a certain way. What's the actual process like to change that mindset? What kind of time course? How much coaching? Like you said, you say it so beautifully. Obviously, easier said than done. Tell me about that process of changing that mindset.
Yeah, well, I can liken it to building skeletal muscle. It requires a lot of reps. And I think that's important because these patterns of thought and behavior have been instilled. As you say, high school, we could even argue about grade school, couldn't we? We've been acting in certain ways for a long time. So there has to be some patience with the process. But there are more than a couple of key strategies, and I include that in the Mindful MD book. This is a pragmatic book. This is not a pontification. So, what are some of the strategies? Well, one of the strategies sounds very simple, but it's taking purposeful pauses. You're in the middle of your day, you're working with your medical assistant, and you're not getting along with your medical assistant. Maybe it's been a rotating door given the shortage of good staff. And you say something to the medical assistant, and he or she rolls their eyes. Okay, this happens, right? And you feel your emotional temperature just shoot through the roof. That's the time to take a purposeful pause. Calm yourself down. You do not want to say something that you're only later going to regret and be called to task by your administrator. So that's a key strategy. And I outline that in the book. I give a lot of examples of how physicians can employ purposeful pauses. Another really important strategy is to really build more compassion for ourselves. It is really hard being a physician. It always has been. It is doubly hard working in today's healthcare environment with the corporatization of medicine, the emphasis on the bottom line, all of the below grade tasks, all of the moral injury that we know is part and parcel of the physician's life. So we have to shift from being an inner bully, an inner critic who's telling us everything that it perceives we're doing wrong, to actually being an inner friend, an inner ally. And again, that can sound very soft, but I have seen it be a game changer for physicians struggling to get through each and every day and get the many tasks done, and then actually come home and actually give some kindness and attention to those that you see on the other side. Those are just a couple of examples, Kevin, of very pragmatic things that we can do that help the mind shift from these well established patterns into patterns that are actually much more resourceful for us.
We're talking to Gail Gazelle. She's an internal medicine physician and a physician coach. We're talking about her book, Mindful MD: 6 Ways Mindfulness Restores Your Autonomy and Cures Healthcare Burnout. Gail, tell us a success story, maybe a before and after picture of a physician that came in, burnt out in the scenario that we had talked about earlier, and then what kind of changes did you make to make a measurable difference in their life?
Yeah, great. I'll call this physician Susan. And I'm not giving away confidentiality here. Susan came to coaching. She was a medical specialist. I won't even say what her exact field was. And she came to coaching really burnt out, exhausted, dragging through the day, very cynical about the practice of medicine. Why did I even go into medicine in the first place? I'm not making any difference. Why bother? And Susan is a mother of two teenagers. And when she would get home, she just had no bandwidth left to actually be patient for these teens. And they were teens. They had their own issues and they wanted mom to just take them here and take them there, et
Mhm.
cetera. And she just was really irritable with them. She was waking up at night, having mental shouting matches with her administrator in her practice. So she was really at the end of her rope when she came to coaching. And she was somebody, like most physicians, who loves to learn. So she was eager to learn new ways of being. She'd never really turned the lens of learning on herself. And coaching provided that very important space and opportunity for her to do so. And she was really out of alignment with who she wanted to be and how she wanted to be showing up. So we have to shine a light on who could I be? What is that better version of myself? Because we lose sight of that when we're in burnout. We don't know that there's a better way. We're just going down. So that was part of the coaching, was really envisioning who her best self was, how she wanted to be showing up at work and with this precious time with the teenagers who, would be leaving home in a matter of years. That was one thing that we did. We also did a lot of work on the comparing mind. That's what we call it in mindfulness speak, because she was comparing herself to all of these other physicians who she only saw their shiny outside. She didn't see the struggles, but she had this motif that somehow she wasn't measuring up. So we needed to break that cycle of self-criticism, that inner comparisanometer that really was only serving to wear her down. I'm really happy to say that Susan was willing to put in that work. It does take work. It takes reps, just like going to the gym. And part of my job as a really seasoned coach is building that momentum and that motivation. So I think Susan would be the first to say that she's a lot happier now. She's a lot lighter. She's been able to set more boundaries at work. When something happens with an administrator, she doesn't take it as personally. She doesn't take it as seriously. She can see that poor administrator, they've got a tough job too.
Yeah.
And how can I work with this person rather than against that person? So she's got an ideal of who she wants to be, and she sets an intention every single day to show up a little more closely to that ideal. It's not like she's waking up doing cartwheels, don't get me wrong. Her life is tough as a mom and as a very busy medical specialist. There's no question about that. But she has more tools to manage all of that, to surf those waves of difficulty so that she feels prouder at the end of the day and she has more emotional bandwidth to spend time with her teenagers. That's just one vignette that I hope can be helpful to your listeners.
And my final question, Gail, tell us some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
Yes. Let me say first, if people are interested in the book, they can download a free chapter, gailgazelle.com/mindfulmd. They can read a little bit for themselves and see that this is not just another book that says, oh, go meditate and do yoga and life will somehow be wonderful, because it is really not that at all. So that's the first takeaway, is please avail yourself of this resource. The second takeaway that I think is critically important is that there's no question that the healthcare system in this country is struggling mightily. Many would say it is dysfunctional and broken. But the key takeaway is that you, each of your listeners, do not have to hand over their happiness and their career satisfaction to a broken system. They don't. And that's the key here, is realizing that there's room for hope. That yes, the system is a mess. I'm going to be the last one to challenge that. And you can still enjoy this career that you have really sacrificed so much to have. I think that's the most important takeaway.
Gail, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight. Thanks again for being on the show.
Total pleasure, Kevin. Thank you so much.